Yo, what's good YouTube? It's your boy Time back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the best settings for best performance on PC and console. So first things first, we're going to be looking at the main video tab. So on console, your thing is going to look a lot different than mine. But if you're on PC, pretty much just any settings that are remotely close to this. So window mode, you're gonna want that on full screen. This is like a really big one. Do not play windowed full screen or windowed, play full screen. And here, I don't really know why I have 1760 by 990. It kind of popped up and I started using it instead of 1600 by 900. I would really recommend 1600 by 900 if you're lagging or getting worse frames on 1920 by 1080, because it just lowers the pixels that it has to render in, so it'll make your game run a little better. If you're really struggling, I would go down to 720, but the game's really gonna not look good, so just be prepared for that. Right here, I am on performance mode, so it is going to look a little different than someone that is on DX11 or DX12. But if you are worried about your performance, I would 100% have your rendering mode on performance mode and run low meshes, which are mobile builds. It's how you get mobile builds. If you're running high, you'll have normal builds. If you're running low, you'll have mobile builds like you see a lot of pros using. So 3D res is basically the same setting as this, but you can do like percentages. So if obviously 84% 3D res isn't going to show up right here, so you can put it on whatever percent you want to have it a little more accurate. So if you want to go a little lower than 1600 by 900 but not 720, then you would use this option right here. Performance mode does turn it off. DLSS must be disabled, as you can see. For the settings down here, I would just recommend putting everything to the lowest. For a while, having your textures on high or epic actually did make your game run better, but I turned that off a long time ago and I haven't been using it since. So I would just recommend having everything on low. If you want your view distance to be on medium, then that's fine. I used to play medium, but I just play near so I can get the best frames. I would always cap your frame rate as well, so whatever hurts your monitors, I would go one farther than that. The reason I'm not using 360 FPS even though I have a 240 Hz monitor is because that jump to 240 to 360 is 120 frames. So that's going to leave a big gap for frames to fluctuate and drop a lot. So that's why I keep it on 240. But if you have a 144 Hz monitor, I would recommend going on 160 or 165. Just like if you have a 60 Hz monitor, I would go on 120. Always have VSync turned off. Never use VSync. I used it before and I thought it felt a lot better, but after turning it back off, I realized that no, it's ass. Do not use it. Show FPS is pretty much preference if you want to see where your frames are at, and if you're dropping frames, you can have that on. I always have it on. I'm pretty sure everyone always has it on. And then rendering mode, obviously you can go performance mode, DirectX 11 or DirectX 12. Direct 11 is what I would use if I wouldn't play on performance mode, but Direct 12 I never really used it and it never really worked for me. So, but other people are different. Some people say they love it, but I recommend using performance mode over everything. Next up, we got the game tab. So you guys, game tab is going to look exactly the same as mine no matter what console you're on. Toggle sprint, I would have this off. I don't know why it's on. I have this off. Pretty much what it does is, so you can read right here, if you press W and let go, it'll still sprint until you press it again and then it'll start normally walking. But pretty much everybody uses sprint by default, so if you're not using sprint by default, I would use sprint by default. 100% do not use toggle sprint. Auto open doors is really good to use. They actually buffed it when chapter 3 came out with sliding, because when you slide through a door you actually lose 0 momentum and you're traveling at the same speed. But pretty much you should always have this on, because if you mess up an edit and run, you could just run straight through the door instead of having to pause for a second and open it. It's a really good setting. Also, you don't have to worry about trying to open the door if you're 50-50ing somebody. So those are just things to think about when you're turning this setting on, but I would always have auto open doors on. Hold to swap pickup, there's no reason to have it off. Pretty much I don't use it at all, to be honest. So you could really have it off or on, but controller players use it a lot. It's really good on controller, so I'd recommend using it on controller. Basically, if you have a shotgun in your second slot and you have nothing else and you want to switch it out for another shotgun, you can just hold your interact button down and it'll swap those two guns out instead of adding it to another slot in your inventory. Toggle targeting, have it off. This is basically when you're aiming in, instead of holding it and releasing it and let go, you would click it. You could take your hand off and it would be zoomed in, so you click again and then it would be done. So yeah, pretty much never turn that on. Mark danger when targeting. This is pretty much when you're aimed in and you mark something, it shows up red. I have this on. I think it's pretty good for when you can't communicate with your teammates or your teammates don't have a mic. Auto pickup weapons is decent for 50-50ing, but if you're playing keyboard, I would recommend just using scroll wheel up or down for keybinds for picking up things. Preferred item slots, I use SMG, shotgun, assault rifle. I have auto sort consumables to the right, so minis and med mist go here pretty much. And if I'm only running a shotgun, I would put the assault rifle in my first slot. But yeah, this is pretty much what I run. You don't have to use preferred, but I do. I think it's pretty helpful. Auto sort consumables to the right. This is a really good thing for keyboard players, not so much controller players, because controller players tend to put either their SMG or the AR at their last slot because the way scrolling through your guns works on controller. So if you're on controller, you might want to have this turned off since you're just moving your consumables. It's not really that big of a deal, but sometimes if you do have an AR in your farthest slot and then you pick up minis, it might just move your AR or SMG, but that's not really too much to worry about. I would say if you're on controller, don't use it if it's messing you up, but if it's not messing you up, I'll just keep using it. Reset building choice. This is pretty much only a setting for controller, so pretty much whenever you pull out your builds with switch mode, say your switch mode circle and you play your builds, reset building choice is going to reset it to a wall. So when you open out your builds, it's going to be a wall. And if you have it off, that means if you just place the stair and you pull your builds back out, it's going to be on stair again. So it's not really much of a issue to keyboard players, but if you're a controller player, I'd recommend having this on. Disable pre-edit option. I don't use pre-edits, but pre-edits are good in some cases, so this is pretty much personal preference. If you're playing a lot of scrims and team-based game modes, I would recommend having this off so you can pre-edit, but I don't use it. And if you're more of a creative player, I wouldn't use it either because you're going to pre-edit your build sometimes. Turbo building, obviously have that on. Confirm edit and release. I made a video about why you should have it off. I run it off. If you want to see what my reasoning is, you can go watch that video. Pretty much all the settings down here don't really matter other than the replays. So on console, I don't know if you can turn replays off, but if you can, I would, because it gives you better frames and less like it, as you can see, it says right here, recording replays can reduce performance, but I have them on just because my PC is pretty good and I don't really see too many frame drops and stuff like that, performance issues. But if you are seeing performance issues, I would have all of these turned off. Onto the HUD, pretty much I have everything on except latency debug stats and runtime performance stats. I have it on 69% as well. Gyro aiming, I don't really know much about this, so I can't really say much about it, but I'm pretty sure it's ass and no controller player uses it. For mouse and keyboard, my X and Y sense is 13.2%. It's tickles sense. I've been using it for a pretty long time now, and yeah, it's pretty good. Targeting sense is 30. Scope sense is 25. Ignore gamepad input is off. Lock input method as mouse is on just because I use keys 2x for double movement. So if you are using double movement, have this setting turned on or else it's not going to work. Audio, regular audio. Sound quality doesn't really matter if it's high or low. Gunshots might sound a little bit different. 3D headphones, do not have that on. Visualize sound effects, this is a big one. I use this. I recommend everyone should use this because it's really broken. I do not hear kids half the time and I just rely on seeing those footsteps. Alright, so now we're on to the keybinds. As you can see, I don't have any move left, right, backwards or anything like that because I do use double movement, so I don't have to use that. But yeah, these are pretty much all my keybinds. I'll just go through them really quickly, the important ones. So like here's my weapon slots and all that type of stuff. Here is my builds and my editing, and then here's less important stuff, and then the rest of the things don't really matter. Here are my binds on controller, but once again I don't really play controller, so it's not really that important. Another thing then, for PC players specifically, I would go to your start menu and search up startup apps and make sure you have all of these off. This is gonna make it so that when you first turn your PC on, that things aren't just opening by themselves. A lot of them say they have no impact, but trust me, they do have a lot of impact. Like Steam's open, the game feels really bad even though it says it has no impact. So just make sure all of these are turned off unless you want something to start up right away. Alright guys, so that pretty much wraps it up. Hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys got some new settings you guys could use. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you did enjoy, and I'm out. Peace.